Dear students, today we will discuss the mechanical design of overhead transmission lines. A proper and reliable mechanical design leads to an efficient transmission system. Overhead lines have to face two types of stresses. The first one is electrical stress, which is due to the voltages, and second is mechanical stress, which is because of the weight of conductors. In addition to both these stresses, overhead lines have to face some natural factors such as wind, ice, moisture, and rain. So an efficient design will be the one which will gives better result in all these stresses. So in our today's discussion we will study some major components of overhead lines, the conductor material, the supporting structure of line, insulators and its type, the string efficiency and methods to improve, corona effect and sag. The main components of overhead lines include conductors, supporting structures, insulators, cross arms, and some miscellaneous items. Conductors, they carry electrical power from sending end station to the receiving end station. Sending end station can either be a generating station or a substation, and the receiving end station can be a substation or a load. The supporting structure may be poles or towers, and they keep the conductor at a suitable level from the ground. The supporting structure can be made up of wood or steel or their alloys. Insulators. Insulators are basically attached with the supporting structures, and they keeps the conductor at safe level from the ground. Or in a simple words, insulators insulates conductor from the tower. Cross arms. Cross arms provide support to the insulators. Cross arms are connected with the tower, and on the cross arms the insulator strings is attached, and below the insulator string the conductor is attached. And the miscellaneous items on a transmission line can be phase plates, danger plates, lightning arresters, or anti-climbing wires. Conductor material. The proper choice of material and proper size of conductor leads to a better power transmission. So an ideal conductor material must have following properties. The conductor must have high electrical conductivity for better power flow and less losses. The material must have high tensile strength so that it can withstand mechanical stresses. The conductor must have low cost so that it can be used for long distances. The conductor must have low specific gravity so that the weight per unit volume can be reduced. Remember, a compromise is always made between the cost and required electrical and mechanical properties, which means that if you want to transmit high power, then you must make sure that the conductor must have all these properties. And if a conductor have all these properties and its cost is very high, then you have to compromise on the cost. In the same way, if the tensile strength of a conductor is high and you are required to use that conductor, and at the same time the cost of that conductor is high, then you have to compromise the cost. It's all because you have to make the transmission system more reliable and effective. Some commonly used conductor materials are copper, aluminium, steel cold aluminium, galvanized steel. The choice of the material will depends upon the cost, the required electrical and mechanical properties, and the local conditions. Means you have to choose a material which is cost effective. Secondly, your electrical and mechanical properties are fulfilled, and the local condition where you are set in the transmission line, your conductor is fulfilling those local condition constraints. All the overhead conductors are stranded, and this stranded is done to increase the flexibility. The stranded conductors, there are generally one central wire, and around that central wire the layers of wires, which can be 6, 12, 18 or 24. These wires forms a strands, and for n layers the total number of individual wire can be formed from this formula, which is 3n n into n plus 1 plus 1, where n is the number of layers. Copper. Copper is an ideal material for overhead line. It is because it have high electrical conductivity, greater tensile strength, and high current density. Higher current density means that it required small cross section area as compared to other materials, and as the cross section area is reduced, then the conductor area in front of wind pressure is also reduced. Copper is a homogeneous material. It is durable and as a best choice for overhead lines, but due to its higher cost and non-availability, it is rarely used. Next we have galvanized steel. Galvanized steel offer higher tensile strength, and they can be used for extreme long spans where the conductor is exposed to abnormally high stresses due to the climatic conditions. They are best suitable for rural areas where cheapness is the main consideration. But due to poor conductivity and high resistance of steel, they are not suitable for transmitting large power over a long distance, but they can be used for transmitting small power over a small distance. Next we have aluminium. Aluminium is a cheaper and lighter than copper, but it has smaller conductivity and tensile strength as compared to copper. And if we make a comparison between aluminium and copper, we found that the conductivity of aluminium is 60% that of copper, which means the cross-section area of conductor must be larger in case of aluminium than copper. It means that if you want to transmit equal amount of power, then the aluminium conductor you are using will be of greater diameter or greater size than that of copper. And when the size increases, the weight also increases. So to bear that weight, you have to design the tower which then support this weight. Next we have the specific gravity of aluminium, which is lower than that of copper. Aluminium conductor has almost one half of the weight as compared to the copper conductor. It means that if you have a length of conductor of aluminium as well as copper and the lengths are equal, then the aluminium will have less weight as compared to copper. And due to this lighter in weight property of aluminium, it swings more when placed on the tower and attached with the cross arms. So to tackle this issue, the tower must have larger cross arms. And due to the properties of cost, conductivity, tensile strength and weight, aluminium has an advantage over the copper. Means aluminium is better than copper when we are considering the properties of cost, conductivity, tensile strength and weight. Use of aluminium is preferred for high transmission because the conductor required is of large size and it's costly. Next we have steel cold aluminium. The tensile strength of aluminium conductor is increased by reinforcement with a core of galvanized steel. The galvanized steel actually prevents from rusting and corrosions. Aluminium conductor produce greater sag due to its weight and due to low tensile strength. So they are not preferred for larger spans of long transmission lines. And to overcome this issue, to overcome the tensile strength of aluminium conductor, they are reinforced with a core of galvanized steel, and the resultant composite material or resultant composite conductor is known as steel cold aluminium, and it is abbreviated as ACSR, which means aluminium conductor with steel reinforcement. These steel cold aluminium conductors consist of a central core of galvanized steel which is surrounded by aluminium strand. And remember, the cross section area of these two metals are generally in ratio of 1:6, and if you want more tensile strength you have to reduce the ratio to 1:4. Steel coated aluminum conductors produce smaller sheath because they have better tensile strength, and they can be used for longer spans because of this reinforcement with the steel, and this reinforcement increases the tensile strength but keeps the composite conductor light. And remember, reinforcement don't affect the weight of composite conductors. And due to smaller sheath with the steel coated aluminum conductors, the tower height can also be reduced, which is overall cost effective. Next, we have supporting structure of line. The supporting structure must have the following properties. The supporting structure must have high mechanical strength so that it can withstand the weight of conductor and wind load. The supporting structure must be lighter in weight without the loss of mechanical strength. Means the supporting structure must be lighter in weight, but they have to be mechanically stable. The supporting structure must be cheaper in cost and economical to maintain, and they must have longer life and easily accessibility of conductors for maintenance purpose. Means if there is some issue on the conductor, then the worker must easily access the conductors, and if the supporting structure are not ideal for accessibility, then it will be difficult for the worker to do maintenance on the tower. The line supports for transmission includes wooden poles, steel poles, RCC poles, and steel towers. Wooden pole, steel pole, and RCC pole are mostly used in the distribution system, while the steel towers are mostly preferred in the transmission system. The RCC poles are made up of concrete, reinforced concrete, and the difference between steel poles and steel towers is the steel tower is made up of multiple steel units, and normally in rural areas wooden structure or wooden poles are used. In front of you we have the steel towers. This figure, it is showing single circuit on a steel tower, and the height of lowest conductor with respect to ground is 12.5 meter, and the distance between these two conductors is 3.35 meter, and in the same way the distance between this conductor and these two conductors is 5.75 meter, and the distance between this conductor and The top of Thunder Tower is 4.5 meter. It is a single circuit. And next we have this 220 kV system or 220 kV tower, where the span between the towers is 320 meter. It is a dual circuit line, three-phase dual circuit line, and they are unequally spaced. Here the spacing between these phases or these conductors is 11 meter, and the height of tower is 41.6 meter. Next we have RCC tower. Here you can see the RCC tower base is 0.35 meter and the height is 10 meter. And if you compare RCC towers with steel towers, you see the difference in the height. It is 4 times than the RCC towers. Insulators. The insulator provide insulation between line conductors. They also provide support to the conductor. In this way, they prevent any leakage current from conductor to the earth. Insulator must have the following properties. They have high mechanical strength in order to withstand conductor load and wind stress. They must have high electrical resistance in order to avoid any leakage current from conductor to earth. Insulator must have relative high permittivity so that dielectric strength remain high. The insulator material should be non-porous and it should be free from impurities and threat. Otherwise, the permittivity will be lowered. This may result in the flow of leakage current inside the insulator, and as a result, the breakdown can occur. The most commonly used material for insulators of overhead line is polyethylene. We have 4 types of insulators. First is pin type insulator, suspension type insulator, strain type insulator, and shackle insulator. The pin type insulator. As you can see in this diagram, there is a groove on the top of insulator disc. In this groove, the conductor is placed. Pin type insulators are mostly used for voltages up to 33 kV, and above 33 kV, the size of pin type insulators become too large and too bulky, so they do not remain economical. Electrical breakdown of insulator can occur either by flashover or puncture. In flashover, the discharge occurs across the air gap between the line conductor and the insulator pin, which offers the shortest distance and least resistance. While in the puncture, the discharge will occur from conductor to pin through the body of insulators, and this occurs when insulator have pores and threads. The insulator that permanently damage due to excessive heat. Such type of breakdowns are known as Trine breakdown. The safety factor of insulator is the ratio between puncture strength and flashover voltage. An insulator must withstand both mechanical and electrical stresses. Next we have suspension type insulators. These type of insulators are mostly used for voltage greater than 33 kV. In suspension type insulator, we use multiple polysilicon discs which are connected in series and they form a string. As you can see in this figure, we have 3 polysilicon discs which are connected in series, and at the base of these insulator string we have a line conductor attached. The conductor is suspended at the bottom of the string while the other end is connected with the cross arm of the tower. Here you can see the top of insulator string is connected with the cross arm. Here each unit or each disc is designed for voltage up to 11 kV, and if someone wants to use 66 kV, then the suspension type insulators will be 6. In the same way, for 110 kV, the number of suspension type insulators will be 10. Suspension type insulators have some advantages. They are cheaper than pin type insulators for voltages greater than 33 kV. The suspension arrangement provides greater flexibility to the line, and if one of the insulator discs damages, the whole string does not become useless, while if the damaged disc is replaced, then the whole string can again be used. Suspension type insulators are generally used with steel towers, and this arrangement provides protection against lightning thunders. The number of insulator discs depends upon the working voltage. Next we have strain type insulator. Whenever there is a dead end of line, or there is a corner, or we have a sharp curve on transmission and distribution line, then the line have maximum tension, and for voltages less than 11 kV, the shackle insulators are used as strain insulators. But for voltages higher than 11 kV or for voltages in transmission line, the strain insulator consists of an assembly of suspension insulators as shown in this figure. Here we have 2 insulation discs, and one end of the insulator string is connected with the pole while the other end is connected with the conductor. The conductor is lying in parallel to the vector which is drawn at the normal of the face area. The disc of strain insulators are used in vertical plane, and when the tension in line is high, such as in reverse PAMs, then we can use 2 or more strains in parallel. Next we have shackle insulators. Shackle insulators are frequently used for low voltage and in distribution lines. Such insulators can be used either in horizontal position or in the vertical position. They can be directly fixed to the pole with a bolt or to the cross arm. As you can see in this figure, there is a bolt on the top of the string, and through this bolt the insulator discs are connected with the pole. The conductor in the groove is fixed with a soft binding wire. As you can see, this D strap between which the insulator is placed and fixed with a bolt. Next we have potential distribution over suspension insulator strength. As you can see in this figure, there are three insulator plates between conductor and cross arm or tower. All these insulator plates produce a capacitive effect as they offer a dielectric strength, and due to this dielectric strength they generate a capacitive effect, and this capacitive effect is shown in this diagram. The three insulator discs are represented by capacitance C, C and C, and for equal potential distribution the current will remain same throughout the line, but the voltage will divide equally. As you can see, in all these capacitance, the voltage V will divide it into V by 3 in each capacitor. A string of suspension insulator consists of several polysilicon discs which are connected in series through a metallic length. The polysilicon portion of each disc lies in between these two metallic rings. Each disc forms a capacitor C known as mutual capacitance or self-capacitance, in which charging current will have been the same throughout the disc, and voltage across each unit would be V over 3 as shown in this figure. In actual practice, there exists another capacitive effect between the insulation disc and nearby tower. This capacitance or this capacitive effect is known as shunt capacitance, and this shunt capacitance is shown in this figure by C1, C1 and C1. Here you can see, in addition to the previous diagram, we have these three capacitance which are in shunt as compared to these three series capacitances, and due to the shunt capacitance the charging current does not remain same. As you can see in the figure, the current divides in this this is shown in the figure I3 and I3, and this I3 divides into two parts. First is I2 which flows in the C1, and second I2 flows in the C, and in the same way this I2 divides in I1 which flows into C1, and other is I1 which flows into C. And due to this shunt capacitances, the potential difference does not remain constant. As a result, the disc which is near to the line conductor, here the lowest one, will have the maximum voltage, and as you move away from the line conductor, the voltage will decrease. Unlike the previous one that was mutual or self-capacitance, the voltages remain same, but in the shunt capacitance, the voltage does not remain same. The strength efficiency. The strength efficiency is basically the ratio of voltage across the string and voltage across disc nearest to the conductor. And if we define strength efficiency, then we have The voltage applied across the string of suspension insulators is not uniformly distributed over various unit or discs. The disc nearest to the conductor has higher potential than the other disc. The string efficiency is denoted by K, and mathematically it have this formula where string efficiency is equal to voltage across the string divided by N into voltage across disc nearest to the conductor, where N is the number of discs in the string. The string efficiency decide the potential distribution along the string. The greater the string efficiency, the more uniform is the voltage distribution. Now, how can we improve the efficiency of string? If breakdown or flashover occurs in insulation of highest stress insulator, which is nearest to the conductor, then after that breakdown, the other unit will also undergo the breakdown phenomena. We have to improve the string efficiency, and the common methods which are used to improve the string efficiency are by using long cross arms. As we have discussed in previous slides that the string efficiency is denoted by K, and it depends upon the ratio of shunt capacitance to the mutual capacitance. So, the lesser the value of K, higher will be the string efficiency and more uniform is the voltage distribution. The value of K can be decreased by reducing the shunt capacitance, and that is achieved by increasing the distance of conductor from the tower. By increasing the distance of conductor from the tower, we are actually increasing the dielectric medium or the dielectric strength of air, which is actually present between conductor and tower. But this method have some limitations, and the limitation of cost and strength of tower do not allow the use of long cross arms. So this method summarizes that if you want to reduce the shunt capacitance, then you have to use long cross arms, and by using the long cross arms you can balance the voltages, or you can balance the voltage distribution along the string. But by using the long cross arms you will need more steel or more insulation material, which as a result will affect the cost. Next we have grading the insulators, or next technique is by grading the insulators. Insulators of different dimension are used so that each of them have a different capacitance value. The insulators are capacitance graded, which means that they are assembled in a string such that the top unit have minimum capacitance and the lowest one, which is nearest to the conductor, have the highest capacitance. As the voltage is inversely proportional to the capacitance, this method equalizes the potential distribution across the units in the string. This method has disadvantage that many different size insulators are used. They have better results can be obtained by using standard insulators for most of the string and larger unit to the conductors, to the near conductors. Simply By threading the insulator means you are using different dimension or different sizes of insulator plates in the string, and greater size of insulators are used at the lowest end of strength, which is near to the conductor, and as you move away from the conductor, the insulation disk area reduces, and in this way the potential distribution balances. Next technique is using the Dahlgren. In this diagram, as you can see, this Dahlgren, which is connected with the conductor, this Dahlgren offers this capacitance between insulation plates or insulation disc and Dahlgren, and this capacitance will balance, this capacitance C2 will balance the capacitive effect of C1, and the capacitance C3 will balance the capacitive effect of C1. So overall the potential distribution will be balanced by using Dahlgren. The potential across each unit in the string can be equalized by using Dahlgren. This Dahlgren is basically a metal ring which is electrically connected with the conductor and is surrounded by bottom insulator as shown in this figure. This Dahlgren will introduce two capacitances C2 and C3 between the metal fitting and line conductors, and the Dahlgren shunt capacitance I1 and I2 are equalized to metal fitting line capacitance current I1 dash and I2 dash. Here you can see in the diagram, this I2 which is flowing in the shunt capacitance C1 is balanced by this I2 dash which is flowing in the C3. In the same way, this I1 which is flowing in the capacitance, the shunt capacitance C1 is balanced by this I1 dash which is flowing in the C2, which is known as Dahlgren capacitance. So as a result of same charging current, I will flow from each unit of strain. Here in the diagram, as you can see, these currents will be balanced, so this will result in uniform potential distribution, and as a result the current I will be constant throughout the insulator strain. Next we have corona effect. The phenomena of violet glow, hissing noise and production of ozone gas in overhead transmission line is known as corona. For two conductors whose spacing is larger as compared to their diameter, and if we apply low voltages, there will be no effect in the surrounding air. But if we increase the applied voltages up to a certain value known as theoretical disruptive voltage, the conductor will be surrounded by faint violet glow, and this is known as corona effect. The corona produces hissing sound, ozone, and corona causes power loss and radio interference. If the applied voltages is increased to a breakdown value, then flashover will occur between conductors due to the breakdown of air insulation. And for a polished and smooth conductor, the corona glow will be uniform throughout the length of conductor. Otherwise, some rough points will appear brighter. Dear students, the corona effect is actually the ionization of air. At higher voltages, the air surrounding the insulator that ionized, and this ionization of air is because of unequal or non-uniform electric field, and this non-uniform electric field actually arises because of the symmetry of spiral conductors. As you can see in the diagram, the outermost surface of insulator have 2 points, two type of region. One is inner side and second one is outer side. As you can see, this outermost curve is the outermost point and this inner curve is the innermost point. Or in this diagram, as you can see, there is a rise and fall on the conductor. So this rise and fall on the conductor, or this sharp points on the conductor, they rise to non-uniform electric field, and due to these points the charge density or the surface charge current density does not remain same, and as a result collisions of electron occurs, and as the collision between the electron occur, they try to escape from the conductor and they move towards the air. They have very high energy and they transfer that energy to the surrounding air and they ionize the air. Higher the voltages, higher will be the corona effect. Now, what are the factors which affect corona? As I have mentioned before, corona effect is because of the atmospheric condition. Corona effect increases when there is moisture in the air which is surrounding the conductor. For a clear sunny day, the corona effect will be less as compared to the rainy day. So let's see what are the factors which affect corona. First one is atmospheric condition. Corona is formed due to ionization of air around the conductor. In rainy day or in moisture, the number of ion is more than normal, so corona occurs at less voltage as compared to a clear weather. I have explained this to you that the corona effect is facilitated, or the corona effect is impulsive because of ionization of air, and this ionization of air occurs because of moisture in air, and during the moisture of air, when we have higher non-uniform electric field, the corona effect will be very high. Next we have conductor size. The corona effect depends upon shape and condition of conductors. If the conductor is rough and irregular, more corona will produce, because uneven surfaces decrease the value of breakdown voltage. This again is represented in the figure. As you can see, the outermost surface have 2 points, one is inner and second one is outer. So such structure increase or facilitates the corona formation. So a standard conductor has irregular surface and it gives rise to more corona than a solid round conductor. Next factor is spacing between the conductors. If the spacing between conductor is greater than the diameter of conductor, there may not be any corona effect. It is because the larger distance between conductor reduces the electrostatic stresses at the conductor surface, so avoiding corona formation. Or in simple words, by increasing the spacing between the conductors, we are actually increasing the air between the conductors, and by increasing the air between conductors, we are introducing higher dielectric medium, and as a result the capacitive effect will reduce or will decrease, and the ionization of air will be reduced, and as the ionization of air is reduced, the corona formation will also be reduced. Next we have line voltages. Voltages play very important part in corona formation, because at high voltage corona formation is very easy. As mentioned, the low voltage does not affect the conditioning of air surrounding, and hence no corona is formed. Means in low voltages the air which is surrounding the conductor does not ionizes, as low voltage does not have any impact on the air which is surrounding the conductor. But if we apply high voltages, then high electrostatic stress will develop around the conductor, and which as a result will ionize the air surrounding the conductor, and as a result corona will be formed. But remember, when there is moisture or humidity in air surrounding the conductor, then the corona formation can also occur even on the low voltages. Next we have two important terms related to the corona effect. First one is critical disruptive voltage. Critical disruptive voltage is the minimum phase to neutral voltage at which corona occurs, and it is given by mathematical equation which is equal to Vc is equal to m naught g naught sigma r log of d over r kV per phase. Here Vc is the critical disruptive voltage, m naught is surface irregularity factor, g naught is breakdown strength of air, sigma is air density factor, this r is radius in centimeters, d is spacing between the conductors. The value of m naught will be 1 for a polished conductor. It means if conductor is polished and it is neat and it is clean, then the value of m naught will be 1, and this m naught is equal to 1 is the maximum value. And if the conductor is not polished or conductor is dirty and have some impurities or it is rough, then the value of m naught will be less than 1. Next we have sigma. In the standard conditions, the value of sigma will be 1. The sigma is basically air density factor, and which is given by 3.92 into B divided by 273 plus T. Here B is the barometric pressure, and which is equal to 760 millimeter of Hg or 76 centimeter of Hg, and this small t is the room temperature or 25 degrees centigrade. At ideal pressure and room temperature, which is 76 centimeter of Hg and 25 degrees centigrade, the value of sigma will be 1. Next thing is D. D is spacing between the conductors in centimeter, and this r is the radius of conductor in centimeters. So theoretical disruptive voltage depends upon m naught, g naught, sigma, spacing between the conductors and radius of conductor. The next important term is visual theoretical voltage. In parallel conductors, the corona effect does not begin at disruptive voltage, but we need higher voltage for corona formation, and that higher voltage is known as visual theoretical voltage, or denoted by VV. The mathematical equation for visual theoretical voltage is VV is equal to mv g naught sigma into r 1 plus 0.3 divided by under root sigma into r log of d over r. All the parameters are same as theoretical disruptive voltage. Here mv is irregulatory factor, and it has a value of 1 for polished conductor, and the value reduces to 0.72 or 0.82 if conductors are rough. In the same way, G naught is breakdown strength at 76 centimeter of mercury Hg and 25 degrees centigrade. Sigma is air density factor given by 3.92 B divided by 273 plus T, and D is spacing between conductor, and R is the radius of conductor. Now, there are some methods to reduce the corona effect. The corona have many disadvantages because it reduces transmission efficiency. Corona can also produce corrosion on the conductors, and it produces radio interference which then affect nearby communication line. So the corona formation must be reduced, and there are some methods to reduce the corona effect. The first one is by increasing the conductor size. By increasing the conductor size, the voltage at which corona forms increases, and hence corona effect is reduced. Means when you increase the conductor size, the voltages at which corona will occur or theoretical disruptive voltage will increase, and as a result the corona formation will be reduced. By increasing the conductor spacing, if we increase the conductor spacing, then the theoretical disruptive voltage will also increased, and as a result corona formation will be difficult. But it has one limitation. The spacing cannot be increased too much because the cost of supporting structure may increase, and which will affect overall cost of the structure. Next thing is sag in the overhead lines. As you can see in the diagram, this A and B are supporting points, and this pink line is showing a conductor, and from this A and B the conductor is suspended, and this O point is the lowermost point on the line. The sag is actually the distance from the support to the point lowest point on the transmission line. The definition of sag is the difference in level between point of support and lowest point on the conductor. When the conductor is suspended between two supports at same level, the sag will take the shape of quaternary, and if the sag is small as compared to the span, then the span sag curve will be like a parabola. The tension at any point on the conductor acts tangentially. The horizontal component of tension is constant throughout the length of wire. These are some important points associated with the sag. The conductor sag should be kept to a minimum to reduce the conductor material required and to avoid extra pole height for sufficient clearance above ground level. This means that if you are using higher sag between two towers, it will increase the size of conductor, which will further increase the height of conductor from the ground. In other words, if you are increasing the sag, then this O point will that's near to the earth. But for a safety margin, you have to keep the lowest point O at a safe distance from the nearby earth object or near earth. So you have to increase the height of tower, which will further increase the cost. Low conductor tension and minimum sag are not possible. Next we have sag of two types. First one is when the supports A and B are at same level, then the sag arises of this type, which is shown in this figure in pink color. Here L is the length of span from point A to point B. W is the weight of conductor, which is acting downwards. T is the tension of conductor, and remember, T at any point is acting tangentially. In this diagram, the point O is the lowest point, and if we draw a line from O directly to the line which is joining A and B, then the length of span will be divided equally into two parts, which is given by L over 2. If we take a point P between O and B such that OP distance is given by X and O, and this vector Y is showing the sag. So the forces which are acting on the portion OP will be the weight WX of the conductor, which is acting at distance X over 2 from O. The next force will be tension T, which is acting at point O in tangent direction as shown in this figure. Means these blue lines, first one is WH and second one is this T. These are the two forces which are acting on the portion OP. For the balance condition, these forces must balance each other, so equating the moments of above two forces at point O, we get this equation where Ty, which is vertical component of this T or tension, is equal to W in H into H over 2, where H over 2 is the half length from O to P. And if we simplify this equation for Y, we get Y is equal to W into H square divided by 2T. The maximum depth or sag is represented by the value of Y at support A or B. So if we put H is equal to L over 2 and Y is equal to S, then we get the equation for sag, which is equal to W into L square divided by 8T. In this figure, as you can see, this sag S is the distance from lowest point on the conductor to the supporting structure, and this Y is the distance which was from the point P to the lowest point on conductor O. So we substituted Y is equal to S and H is equal to L over 2, where H is equal to L over 2 is half distance of the length of span. So by putting these substitutions, we get equation of sag when supports are at equal level, and the equation is S is equal to W into L square divided by 8T, where W is weight per unit length of conductor, L is length of span, or L is distance of both these supports, and T is tension in the conductor. Next we have sag when supports are at unequal level. This type of sag arises when transmission line is going in region which is unequal, or it is not a plane area, such that in hilly areas or in some point where there is water or river flowing and one tower is at more height than the other tower, or mostly such type of condition occurs in hilly area. In this figure, the L is span length, H is difference in levels between two supports, H1 is distance of support at lower level, that is A from O, means H1 is distance of A from O, and H2 is distance of B from O, and remember B is at higher level and A is at lower level. Here T is the tension of the conductor. Here you can see in the figure, this A is at lower end and B is at higher end, and the lowest most point on the line is near to the O, near to the A, and it is denoted by point O. H1 is distance of O to A, and H2 is distance of point O to point B. This H is height of is difference in height between A and B, and S2 is height of O to B, and S1 is height of O to A, or in other words S1 is sag 1 or S1 is sag of point O and point A, and S2 is sag of point O and point B, and L is the length between point A and point B. And if W is weight per unit length of conductor, then according to our previous equations we have sag S1 will be equal to W into H1 square divided by 2T, and sag S2 will be given by W into H2 square divided by 2T. Here we have H1 plus H2 equal to this length L. So we have H1 plus H2 is equal to L. If we subtract S1 from S2, then we have this equation, and if we solve this equation with that, H is equal to WL divided by 2T into H2 minus H1. Here H is equal to S2 minus H1. In this figure, this H is the difference of S2 and S1, and we have to find this value of H. So H is equal to W into L divided by 2T into H2 minus H1, or H2 minus H1 is equal to 2TH divided by WL. Now the value of H1 will be equal to L over 2 minus TH divided by WL, and the value of H2 will be equal to L over 2 plus TH divided by WL, and this H1 and H2 are the distance of point O from point A, and H2 is the distance of point O to point B. Hope you have understood the mechanical design of overhead transmission system. If you have any questions or if you have any suggestions, please ask in the comments.